Breaking Hollywood meltdown at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party exposes a family secret too shocking to believe. Rob Reiner's empire of fame and legacy comes crashing down in front of A-list stars, as his own son, Nick Reiner, unleashes chaos that no one saw coming. This isn't just drama, it's betrayal, heartbreak, and a scandal shaking the foundations of Hollywood. You won't believe what went down behind closed doors, and the fallout will leave you speechless. Stay with me, because every second counts. Imagine the tension, the frozen smiles, the whispers cutting through polished laughter. Conan O'Brien's Christmas mansion, usually a playground for Hollywood elite, became the stage for something far darker than the glitz. Rob Reiner walked in with that signature grin, the one that won hearts in The Princess Bride, and When Harry Met Sally. But tonight it was hollow, a mask stretched too thin. His wife, Michelle, was poised and graceful, trying to anchor the room as conversation stuttered to a halt. And then came Nick's shaved head, piercing eyes, moving like a predator through the crowd. The energy shifted. Suddenly, this wasn't a holiday party anymore. It was a powder keg. Guests who had spent decades navigating Hollywood's charm were frozen, sensing the storm before it hit. Nick's every word, every look, was a test, a challenge, a silent dismantling of the family's legacy. He approached Bill Hader, a comedian known for his warmth, and instead of the usual jovial exchange, he launched sharp, cutting questions, slicing through the air with cold precision. Rob tried to intervene, whispering warnings and pleas, but it was already too late. The room felt like it was closing in. Conversations evaporated. Laughter died midair. Every Hollywood insider present could feel it, a dynasty unraveling in real time. Then came the first eruption, a confrontation, raw, loud, impossible to ignore. Michelle flinched. Rob froze. Every word Nick spat was a dagger, a deliberate attack on the very foundation of their family. And while the fight slowed, it didn't end. Tension hung like smoke, thick and suffocating, marking the first time anyone had seen the man who created cinematic magic utterly powerless before his own son. It was fear, not embarrassment, that darkened Rob's eyes as he whispered to a friend, "I don't know what he's going to do next." And that, more than the shouting or the anger, was the harbinger of the horror waiting just hours later. The morning after that explosive night at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party, Brentwood's streets glistened under the sun, deceptively calm, with lawns manicured to perfection and facades that hid the chaos inside. But inside the Reiner estate, the calm was suffocating. Rob and Michelle's home, usually a sanctuary of warmth and family love, had transformed into a chamber of dread. What happened in the night had left a scar so deep that even the air felt heavy with anticipation. Their family massage therapist, arriving for a routine Sunday appointment, first noticed a silence that wasn't peaceful. It was ominous, unnatural. The gate intercom buzzed once, twice nothing. Calls to the house went unanswered. Cell phones rang, swallowed by silence. The quiet pressed against her chest, a physical weight that made her stomach churn, the kind of dread that screams something is terribly off. Something wasn't right. She reached out instinctively to Rob, and Michelle's daughter, knowing the young woman lived just across the street and always kept a pulse on the family. That call shattered the illusion of safety. Within seconds, Rose sprinted across the frost-tipped driveway, her sneakers scraping against concrete, breath sharp and uneven, adrenaline fueling her movement like a drumbeat in a horror film score. Every second stretched painfully, echoing the invisible chaos inside the home. When she reached the front door, the air felt wrong, too still, almost alive, like the house itself was holding its breath. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a warning. Rooms she had walked through thousands of times were suddenly foreign, alien. The scent of home, warm, familiar, comforting, was tainted by something she couldn't yet name. And then she found them, Rob and Michelle. The shock was immediate, visceral, the kind that sears itself into memory. Rose didn't scream. She didn't even shout. She bolted out of the house, collapsing on the driveway, gasping, as the reality hit her like a tidal wave of ice-cold water. Minutes later, red and blue lights reflected against the perfectly trimmed hedges, flashing against the stucco walls as first responders arrived, their presence simultaneously comforting and horrifying. A first responder stepped forward, voice measured, but the words were devastating. Michelle was gone. Rob was gone. In the span of 20 minutes, a family that seemed untouchable, that radiated warmth and stability to anyone watching from the outside, was ripped apart in a way that defied comprehension. Detectives began a slow, deliberate walkthrough. Cameras clicked, neighbors whispered behind locked gates, but one glaring detail cut through every rumor and headlined the scene was spotless. No forced entry, no smashed windows, no sign of struggle. Everything was eerily in place, untouched. The initial shock that this could be a simple robbery or random attack evaporated instantly. This was no crime of opportunity. This was personal. The warning Rob had whispered at the party, the fear that gnawed at his eyes as he muttered, "I don't know what he's going to do next," wasn't paranoia. It was prophecy. Every evidence marker, every forensics photo, told the same story. The danger had come from inside the walls. Inside the people they trusted, the home they built with love and care, where laughter had once echoed, a betrayal had festered. Meanwhile, the investigation traced Nick Reiner across Los Angeles, revealing a methodical, calculated escape plan that was as disturbing as the crime itself. He used public transport like a commuter, navigating complex transfers with quiet precision, leaving no trace of panic, no slip-ups, no chaos that usually accompanies someone fleeing a scene of violence. Investigators studied every detail: the timing of buses, the stops he took, the moments he paused to check a schedule or a street sign, and the more they observed, the more the cold, clinical nature of his movements became terrifyingly clear. This wasn't the work of a man who had snapped in a moment of irrational anger. This was a carefully choreographed descent into chaos, a mind operating with the kind of control that makes experts shiver. Forensic evidence collected from the scene painted a grim picture, one that blurred the line between accident and intention. Blood spatter, the pattern of sharp force injuries, the presence of microscopic DNA traces in places they shouldn't have been at all suggested an act of rage. Yes, but one executed with a terrifying awareness. Even slippage, the phenomenon where the attacker's grip fails and DNA transfers unintentionally, became a crucial clue, a biochemical timestamp confirming who was present and exactly when. Every shred of material evidence, every microscopic detail, left no room for misinterpretation. The violence was deliberate, personal, intimate. The lack of forced entry told its own story. The perpetrator had been inside, had known the rhythms of the house, the locations of its inhabitants, the precise flow of movement through the rooms. It was a psychological attack as much as a physical one. As forensic teams cataloged every item, every floorboard, and every trace of the scene, they discovered subtle anomalies that deepened the horror. Objects slightly shifted from their normal position, faint residues indicating cleaning or wiping in specific areas, evidence of attempts to erase, obscure, or manipulate. It wasn't just a crime, it was a carefully orchestrated scenario that revealed a mind operating on meticulous, almost surgical calculation. Meanwhile, back on the streets of Brentwood, the world outside remained oblivious, the sun casting an indifferent light on a neighborhood forever changed. The media had yet to catch the full scope of the tragedy, headlines lagging behind the grim reality, while investigators worked tirelessly to piece together a puzzle whose pieces were embedded in blood, DNA, and the silent testimony of the Reiner estate itself. And while the technical investigation unfolded, the emotional fallout began. Family, friends, neighbors, colleagues, and the broader Hollywood community struggled to process the enormity of what had happened. Rob Reiner, a man who had spent decades crafting stories of warmth, humor, and familial connection on screen, was gone. Michelle, the steady, silent anchor of the family, was gone. The shockwaves rippled outward, shaking the illusion of security, exposing the uncomfortable truth that no status, no reputation, no wealth could insulate anyone from the unpredictable consequences of human frailty and hidden turmoil. Every conversation, every whispered speculation, carried the weight of grief and fear. And yet, even as public fascination grew, the meticulous forensic work continued to reveal layer after layer of premeditation, of control, of psychological insight that went beyond ordinary comprehension. The killer or perpetrator had studied the house, understood the patterns, anticipated reactions. The night's events at Conan O'Brien's party weren't isolated incidents. They were a precursor, a warning signal that, if ignored, led straight to this catastrophic morning. The evidence suggested a slow build-up, years in the making, culminating in a single, horrifying act that left no room for ambiguity. The air inside the Reiner home was heavy not just with grief, but with the residue of intention, the lingering presence of what had transpired, an invisible scar etched into walls that had once echoed with laughter. And while investigators, psychologists, and forensic experts meticulously reconstructed events, the emotional truth became undeniable. The betrayal came from within, from someone whose proximity should have been safety, but instead became the vehicle for destruction. As every detail emerged, From the blood patterns to the silence of the phones, from the unbroken locks to the calculated movements of Nick Reiner, the chilling realization hit hard: this tragedy was not the result of impulsive violence. It was the manifestation of long-suppressed chaos, psychological unraveling, and the ultimate collision between love, expectation, and human fragility. It was a cautionary tale written in blood and silence, a reminder that even the most polished, celebrated families are vulnerable when private struggles remain hidden, when warnings go unheeded, and when the most devastating threats come from the places and people we trust most. By the end of that morning, the Reiner estate had become a crime scene, a crucible, a testimony to how quickly order can collapse into chaos, how a single night can change the trajectory of countless lives forever, and how love, hope, and legacy can be weaponized into a tragedy that leaves Hollywood and the world reeling. Every minute of that day, every subtle forensic discovery, every whispered detail among detectives and family friends carried the weight of disbelief and sorrow. Nothing in the neighborhood, nothing in the city, could prepare anyone for the gravity of what had unfolded. And yet, amid the horror, amid the silence and shock, the story pressed forward, demanding attention, demanding reckoning, a reminder that even the sunniest streets and the most pristine homes can hide unspeakable darkness within. Then came the gas station footage, a moment that sent shockwaves through investigators, psychologists, and the entire Hollywood community, like a clip that defied every expectation about what someone accused of such an unthinkable act should look like. Nick Reiner, the son of Rob and Michelle Reiner, moved through the aisles with a disturbingly calm, almost casual precision, as if he were just any ordinary customer on a lazy Sunday morning. There was no tremor in his hands, no panic in his eyes, no hint of the chaos that had consumed the Reiner estate just hours before. He stopped at the coolers, paused deliberately, scanned the labels with a kind of methodical attention to detail that struck investigators as almost clinical, and finally selected a sports drink, holding it for just a moment longer than needed, as though time itself had slowed to accommodate his measured movements. Then, without hesitation, he joined the line behind complete strangers, blending into the mundane, performing a terrifyingly ordinary ritual that belied the magnitude of the tragedy he had orchestrated. Cameras caught every second, every movement, and yet the image that replayed endlessly on news cycles and in forensic analysis revealed a chilling truth: the accused wasn't panicked. He wasn't remorseful. He was in full control. Detectives reviewing the footage noted the unnatural absence of fear, the eerie composure, and the deliberate way he navigated the store, scanning not only products but his surroundings, like a predator evaluating territory. His baseball cap was pulled low, black and green jacket shielding his features, backpack slung casually over one shoulder. Yet every detail of his posture, every measured step, broadcasted an unsettling confidence that left law enforcement unsettled and experts alarmed. Psychologists who later analyzed the footage described it as a textbook example of compartmentalization, the ability to perform ordinary, socially acceptable behavior while carrying the weight of extreme inner chaos. They compared it to spy training or tactical military precision, the kind of calculated calm that only someone fully aware of their actions and the consequences could achieve. As Nick moved through the store, he appeared polite, collected, almost charmingly ordinary to anyone who didn't know who he was. The cashier, interviewed later, recalled a man who smiled faintly, nodded, and paid with a credit card without a hint of hesitation, completely unaware of the enormity of his presence. The juxtaposition between the horrific crime scene in Brentwood and this banal public moment created a psychological shockwave. The man accused of murder, of destroying a family, was navigating public spaces with all the ease of a man grabbing milk for breakfast. Investigators, stunned by the calmness, realized the implications immediately. This was not impulsive violence. This was an act carried out with forethought, and the aftermath meticulously managed. Every step, every pause, every deliberate interaction revealed a mind operating in a calculated state of control, planning not only the act but the narrative that would follow. By using public transport instead of a car, avoiding surveillance cameras strategically, choosing a route that minimized detection, Nick demonstrated a preternatural awareness of law enforcement tactics. He wasn't running. He was executing a post-crime plan with precision that made the chaos in Brentwood seem almost ceremonial, as if the city itself had become a stage and he the actor choreographing every scene. While law enforcement scrambled to connect dots, forensic experts at the Reiner estate continued to piece together a story far darker than any Hollywood script. Every blood spatter, Every microscopic DNA trace and every subtle forensic anomaly told a chilling tale of intentionality. Sharp force injuries on Rob and Michelle suggested rage. Yes, but they also suggested control, precision, and planning, a duality that experts described as almost unfathomable. Slippage, the inadvertent transfer of DNA when gripping a weapon, became a critical element in confirming the timeline and the actor's presence. Forensic teams analyzed these biochemical handshakes that locked Nick in place at the exact moment of the attack, proving that science had already rewritten the story that headlines were only beginning to tell. The meticulousness of the attack, combined with Nick's calm public behavior, forced investigators and psychologists alike to reconsider every assumption about impulsive acts of familial violence. Every indication pointed to preparation, to forethought, and to an intimate understanding of his parents' routines, their morning habits, the locations they frequented inside their own home, the flow of movement that allowed him to commit the act with devastating efficiency. As each revelation surfaced, the narrative grew more horrifying. This wasn't just a domestic tragedy. It was a methodical dismantling of trust, a surgical strike against the very foundation of love and security that the Reiner family had built over decades. News outlets replayed the gas station footage relentlessly, each viewing amplifying the public's disbelief. Hollywood insiders who had once considered the Reiners untouchable began whispering, sharing the surreal juxtaposition of celebrity legacy and domestic horror. Psychologists, criminologists, and former FBI profilers dissected the footage, emphasizing that true panic or a psychological break usually manifests in chaos, in hesitation, in mistakes. Nick's calm demeanor shattered that expectation entirely. He was aware of every camera, every bystander, every potential witness. He was a man operating simultaneously within society and above it, a disturbing equilibrium that left investigators reeling. As the day unfolded, surveillance traced him to a modest hotel in Santa Monica, a location that initially seemed innocuous, almost pedestrian, but forensic and behavioral analysis revealed it to be the epicenter of meticulous post-crime management. Windows were covered with sheets, evidence of foresight to prevent detection, and subsequent forensic investigation confirmed the room had been used to clean, to wash, to alter clothing, and to erase traces of what had occurred hours earlier. Every detail, every small action, spoke volumes. Nothing was accidental. No chaos. No desperation, only deliberate, chilling preparation to manage fallout. In that quiet, dimly lit hotel room, the psychology of control manifested physically, the kind of environment where law enforcement knew the perpetrator could operate in isolation, shielded from interference, yet still orchestrating outcomes from within. And when police finally confronted him, there was no chase, no dramatic struggle, just the same eerie calm, the same composed demeanor, as if he were surrendering to routine rather than consequence. It was a capture devoid of theatrics, but laden with psychological terror. The legal implications immediately followed. Nick was placed in a high-security medical ward under 24-hour observation, his every movement monitored, recorded, and scrutinized. Defense attorneys would later argue insanity, claiming detachment from reality, psychological fragility, and mental illness as the cornerstone of their argument. Prosecutors countered with video evidence and meticulous forensic timelines, emphasizing awareness, premeditation, and full consciousness at every stage. And through it all, the public grappled with the human dimension, the horrifying reality that a family known for love, warmth, and generosity had been destroyed from within. As details emerged, experts pointed out a painful duality: the outward composure and normalcy in public contrasted violently with the intimate, controlled brutality of the crime scene. Love, trust, and family bonds had been weaponized in a way that transcended ordinary tragedy. The consequences rippled outward, reaching beyond the Reiners, forcing audiences worldwide to confront uncomfortable truths about mental illness, trust, and the fragile veneer of control that even the most celebrated families maintain. Every forensic revelation, every psychological analysis, every public observation reinforced a singular, terrifying fact: Nick Reiner had executed a plan that was both intimate and methodical, and in doing so, had created a story that blurred the lines between cinematic horror and real-life tragedy. The gas station footage, initially seeming mundane, became emblematic of the entire case, a visual reminder that sometimes the most ordinary behavior hides the most extraordinary darkness. And as the world watched, each replay, each frame, each painstakingly analyzed second deepened the collective understanding of how carefully, how calculatedly, and how terrifyingly human malice can unfold when fueled by obsession, control, and betrayal. It was a narrative that kept everyone, investigators, journalists, Hollywood insiders, and the public alike, on edge, questioning how love, trust, and the illusion of normalcy could be dismantled with such cold, surgical precision, leaving a family legacy shattered and a community stunned, forever changing the lens through which the world would view even the most polished and powerful Hollywood households. As the investigation shifted from the immediate aftermath of Brentwood to the courtroom and the public eye, the stakes rose to levels few in Hollywood had ever witnessed. The narrative that began in the polished halls of Conan O'Brien's Christmas party had now spilled across Los Angeles, through national news cycles, and into every corner of social media, transforming a private family tragedy into a public, almost surreal spectacle. Legal teams from both sides began to maneuver with precision rivaling the careful choreography Nick had exhibited in his escape and evasion. Prosecutors, armed with surveillance footage, forensic reports, and the biochemical handshake evidence that tied Nick to every step inside his family home, framed a narrative of chilling awareness and intent. Meanwhile, defense attorneys crafted a counter-narrative, emphasizing mental health struggles, documented rehabilitation attempts, and a history of instability that suggested detachment from reality rather than malicious premeditation. Every public hearing, every press release, every courtroom motion was analyzed by a Hollywood and legal ecosystem that thrives on drama and spectacle, amplifying the tension exponentially. As experts debated, former FBI profilers, behavioral psychologists, and even Hollywood insiders offered testimony that painted a picture simultaneously horrifying and fascinating. The evidence suggested that Nick had not only committed the act, but had anticipated every reaction, every investigation, every possible move law enforcement might take. His behavior in public, calm and methodical, reinforced the notion of a mind operating at an almost preternatural level of control, a stark contrast to the chaos and heartbreak he left behind. As the courtroom proceedings unfolded, the Reiner estate's tragedy became a stage for a broader, almost philosophical exploration of trust, family bonds, and the fragility of love. Rob Reiner, whose career had built worlds of connection, warmth, and morality on screen, was now a symbol of the vulnerability inherent in parental trust. The tension escalated further as the trial delved into mental health history, prior interventions, and the documented struggle with addiction and rehabilitation. Defense attorneys argued that Nick's actions were the tragic outcome of untreated psychological distress, amplified by isolation, pressure, and the complex dynamics of parental expectation. Prosecutors countered with surveillance, forensic evidence, and behavioral analysis, highlighting awareness, precision, and deliberate planning. Each expert witness added layers to the narrative, building suspense while deepening the emotional resonance of the tragedy. Family friends testified to the loving, devoted nature of Rob and Michelle, to the care they extended despite immense challenges, and to the warning signs that had been present but underestimated. Their testimonies painted a human, heartbreaking picture that contrasted starkly with the calculated, chilling behavior exhibited by Nick in public and captured by forensic and surveillance evidence. The trial became an examination of the duality of human nature: love versus calculation, hope versus despair, control versus chaos. Every day of proceedings added new layers, new suspense, and new emotional intensity, leaving audiences around the world riveted. The courtroom drama, intertwined with forensic revelations and psychological analysis, created a continuous loop of tension that mirrored the suspense of a cinematic thriller. And through all of it, the memory of Rob and Michelle Reiner lingered like a ghost, their legacy of warmth, mentorship, and cinematic brilliance casting a poignant, almost unbearable shadow over every motion, every argument, every revelation. The stakes were not just legal, they were human, emotional, and cultural, and the story, as it unfolded, forced everyone watching to confront profound questions. How does love coexist with danger? How do families navigate mental illness, addiction, and hidden turmoil? How can tragedy strike even in households that seem untouchable, that radiate perfection and success? Each answer revealed more tension, more heartbreak, more suspense, and more reason for audiences to stay glued to every development, every court filing, every witness testimony, every forensic breakthrough, every twist in a story that was as Hollywood as it was horrifyingly real. Rob and Michelle Reiner gave the world warmth, laughter, and a life-affirming legacy of love and kindness. But their story reminds us all of a harsh truth: even the strongest families can hide cracks, even love can blind, and even the most vigilant care can fail when darkness festers in silence. So, pause and ask yourself, are we truly paying attention to the people we love? Are we noticing the warning signs before it's too late? Talk about it. Check in. Speak up. And remember, Rob and Michelle's legacy isn't defined by tragedy, it's defined by the light they shared, the humanity they embodied, and the lessons we carry forward. If this story moved you, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's most shocking and emotional scandals. Stay aware, stay compassionate, and keep the conversation alive, because this isn't just Hollywood drama. It's a mirror reflecting the fragility, love, and heartbreak of us all.